Listen carefully. This is not a channel for the weak, the fragile, or the ones still begging for approval. This is for the few who are ready to burn excuses, crush weakness, and build themselves into something untouchable. If you're tired of being average, hit subscribe now. Because every second you stay the same, someone stronger is taking your place. You thought I would break. You thought betrayal would silence me, that rejection would cripple me, that disrespect would bury me. You believed your lies would twist me into nothing but a shadow of what I was. You wanted my collapse because it would have fed your ego. You needed me small so you could feel big. But what you didn't understand is this: pain doesn't destroy everyone. Sometimes pain creates something you can't control, can't undo, can't kill. When you cut me, I bled, but I also learned. Every wound taught me something sharp. Every betrayal drilled a lesson into my skull. Every time you tried to humiliate me, you hammered steel into my bones. You thought you were breaking me down, but what you were really doing was stripping away the softness that made me easy prey. What survived was not weakness. What survived was harder than anything you could handle. You whispered behind my back, spreading poison with every word. You wanted my name to carry shame, to be weighed down by your stories. And at first, yes, it stung. But then I realized something you never expected. Poison only works if I drink it. The world can hear your lies, but the only voice that defines me is mine. So while you spent your night sharpening words like knives, I spent mine sharpening myself. Now, who's really bleeding? You expected me to cry for help. You expected me to beg for understanding. But I looked around and saw the truth. No one was coming. No savior. No rescue. Just me standing in the wreckage. And that's when I stopped waiting. That's when the begging died. That's when the victim burned. In the silence of abandonment, something else stepped forward. A darker self. A self that doesn't flinch. A self that doesn't need anyone. That's what you built when you tried to destroy me. You thought betrayal would paralyze me, but betrayal taught me clarity. I saw who was real and who was fake. I saw who clapped for me in the light and who sharpened knives in the dark. You showed me everything I needed to know about people. That's the education pain gives. No school could have taught me what you did. You showed me how fragile loyalty is, how quickly promises rot, how easily love turns into leverage. And in that education, I found strength. Do you think I forgot? Do you think I erased the moments when you laughed while I stumbled? No. I remember every second. I remember the smirks, the whispers, the way you looked at me like I was finished. That memory is carved into me, but not as trauma, as fire, as fuel. Every reminder of disrespect is a push forward. Every scar is a map of where I refuse to return. You thought the memory would haunt me, but the memory drives me. I was never supposed to rise. I was supposed to vanish. That was the plan, wasn't it? Use your cruelty like a hammer until I cracked. But all you did was hammer out a weapon. All you did was forge something unrecognizable. You don't understand the law of pain. Once you awaken it, you don't get to control it. You thought you could light a fire and keep it small. But fire doesn't stay small, fire spreads. And this fire doesn't burn me anymore. It burns everything in my way. Understand this. Your disrespect did not break me. It revealed me. You uncovered a version of myself I didn't even know was there. A version that doesn't ask for permission. A version that doesn't explain. A version that doesn't kneel. You wanted me weaker, but instead you gave me something permanent, detachment. The kind of detachment you can't manipulate. The kind of detachment you can't guilt. The kind of detachment you can't use. What's left is not the same person you betrayed. That person is dead. The one standing now doesn't care about your approval, doesn't care about your apology, doesn't care about your recognition. That person doesn't chase, that person doesn't fold, that person doesn't even hear you anymore. And the cruel joke is this: you built that person. You can scream, you can lie, you can pretend you still have power, but deep down you know you can't kill a monster you created. I know why you hate me now. It's not because I hurt you, it's because I survived you. You hate me because I wasn't supposed to rise. You hate me because my existence exposes your failure. You hate me because when people look at me now, they don't see your lies. They see resilience. They see strength. They see the scars you left. But those scars don't shame me. They shame you. This is the beginning. The birth of the arc you never saw coming. You thought betrayal was the ending. It wasn't. It was the trigger. The opening scene. The setup to something much darker. The moment when the victim you mocked was replaced with something untouchable. That's where you made your mistake. You believed I would collapse under weight. Instead, I became the weight. The kind of weight you'll never lift. The kind of weight that crushes those who threw it. The truth is simple. Pain was never my prison. Pain was my forge. And every strike you thought would shatter me just sharpened the edges. Every rejection became resistance. Every insult became indifference. Every betrayal became discipline. You thought you were tearing me down, but you were building something you cannot stop. Something you cannot undo. Something that doesn't answer to you anymore. So remember this. Remember the moment you thought you won. Remember the moment you laughed at my silence. Remember the moment you thought the story ended. Because that memory is your defeat. That moment is when you created me. And from here on, nothing you do can kill what you built. You wanted my ending, but all you wrote was your own nightmare. You thought I would break, but all you did was awaken something you'll never survive. Pain. The first teacher you never asked for, but the only one that never lies. When they betrayed you, when they mocked you, when they left you bleeding in silence, they thought pain would finish you. But pain doesn't finish people. Pain transforms them. The wound that was meant to kill you became the scar that carried your survival. Every cut, every rejection, every humiliation, it taught you lessons no book, no mentor, no preacher could ever give. Pain taught you that nobody is coming to save you. Nobody is coming to hold your hand and whisper that it will all be fine. Pain shows up like a merciless drill sergeant, tearing your illusions apart and leaving you with only one option: adapt or die. You adapted. You had no choice. That's why you're still standing. That's why you're still here when others would have folded. Pain wrote its lessons into your bones, and those lessons built the monster they never saw coming. People run from pain because they think it's punishment. They drown it in noise, numb it with addictions, bury it under distractions. But when you face it head on, you realize it's not punishment, it's training. Every sleepless night, every tear that refused to fall, every betrayal that burned your chest like fire. That was the training ground. That was life sharpening you, preparing you to become something unbreakable. You didn't realize it then, but every second of suffering was a blueprint for transformation. Pain is efficient. It doesn't waste time with lectures or gentle reminders. It rips, it cuts, it drills, it breaks every weak layer until only the core remains. You can't fake strength when pain enters the room. You can't act brave. You can't lie to yourself. Pain forces truth, and that truth is brutal. You either rise or you rot. There is no middle ground. And you rose. Not gracefully, not beautifully, but violently. You crawled through the mess they left you in, and somewhere in that crawling something changed. You stopped asking, why me? And started saying, try me. That's the first shift pain gives you. It steals your innocence, but in return, it gives you fire. Fire that doesn't go out. Fire that doesn't forgive. The kind of fire that makes ordinary people uncomfortable because they know they could never handle it. Do you understand what that means? The very people who tried to break you are now terrified of what they created. Because pain didn't leave you the same. It rewired you. It burned weakness out of you. It stripped your illusions and stitched steel into your skin. You are not who you were before the betrayal, before the rejection, before the cruelty. That version of you is dead. And in its place stands someone they can't touch anymore. Think about it. Every time they disrespected you, they handed you more fuel. Every time they lied, they gave you another scar. Every time they rejected you, they threw another log on the fire that now burns behind your eyes. They thought pain was a cage. Instead, it became your weapon. They armed you without realizing it. And that's the greatest mistake they'll ever make. Pain also taught you patience. When you were left alone, when no one picked up the phone, when no one gave a damn, you sat in silence with nothing but yourself. And in that silence, you learned endurance. You learned how to stand without applause, how to breathe without validation, how to move without permission. That silence was agony at first, but eventually it turned into clarity. And clarity is power, because now you see through the lies, through the games, through the illusions. Nothing blinds you anymore. People who haven't suffered think power comes from money, status, or recognition. They don't understand that real power comes from surviving what should have destroyed you. Real power is walking through fire and coming out with eyes that never blink again. Real power is the monster you became when pain refused to let you rest. So here's the truth. They'll never admit they trained you. They trained you with their cruelty. They trained you with their rejection. They trained you with their betrayals. Every attempt to weaken you became unintentional preparation for your rise. They don't realize it yet, but you are their mirror, the reflection of everything they tried to bury. That's why they fear you now. That's why they avoid your eyes, because your existence reminds them of what they did, and worse, of how badly their plan failed. But don't ever forget, pain wasn't a choice. It was forced on you. And maybe that's the greatest gift, because the things we choose, we often quit. But the things forced on us either kill us or build us into something terrifying. Pain didn't give you a way out. It backed you into a corner and demanded a response, and your response was evolution. You became sharper, colder, stronger. You became what they can no longer control. That's why pain is the first lesson. It teaches you the cost of trust. It teaches you the fragility of loyalty. It teaches you that love, respect, even friendship, all of it can vanish in an instant. And yet, while they thought those losses would cripple you, they did the opposite. They ripped away the illusions and left you with reality. Pain forced you to live in truth. And once you live in truth, you are impossible to manipulate. So remember this. They wanted you broken. They wanted you begging. They wanted you silent. Instead, you walked out of the fire with scars that read like scripture. Pain taught you discipline. Pain taught you control. Pain taught you how to walk alone and never stumble. And that is something they will never forgive you for. Not because you're weak, but because you became the very monster their cruelty designed. Pain was the first lesson, and it will always be the hardest. But it was also the most necessary. Without it, you would still be soft, still be begging, still be blind. Now you are none of those things. Now you are untouchable. Now you carry the fire they handed you, and it burns brighter than they ever imagined. And the best part? Every time they see you now, every time they hear your name, every time your silence echoes louder than their noise, they're reminded that the pain they inflicted didn't bury you. It built you. It turned you into exactly what they feared most. They thought pain would bury you. They thought humiliation would silence you. They thought betrayal would leave you crawling. But something else happened, something they never planned for. The pain didn't destroy you. It restructured you. The humiliation didn't silence you. It rewired you. The betrayal didn't kill you. It birthed something new, something far more dangerous than the version of you they thought they'd broken. The victim died, and in his place, something cold stood up, something unrecognizable, a monster. Not the type that hides in shadows, but the kind that walks openly with scars as proof, daring the world to try again. The kind of monster who doesn't beg, doesn't plead, doesn't apologize. A creature born from betrayal, molded in silence, sharpened by cruelty. And now, you don't fear the people who tried to break you. They fear you because they know deep down they built what stands before them. Monsters aren't born, they're constructed, piece by piece, wound by wound. Every time they lied, they hammered steel into your bones. Every time they mocked you, they carved stone into your skin. Every time they tried to push you under, they forced your lungs to grow strong enough to breathe in fire. You were ordinary once. They ended that. Now you are the reminder of their own cruelty. You are the mirror they can't look into without trembling, because all they see is what they created. And here's the part they'll never admit. They trained you. They didn't mean to, but they did. They trained your mind to take punishment without breaking. They trained your heart to beat without love. They trained your spirit to keep moving even when everything was taken away. They thought they were killing you, but they were teaching you the one lesson no book, no teacher, no mentor could ever teach: how to rise when there's nothing left to rise with. That's the education they never meant to give you. That's the curriculum of cruelty. The moment you stopped waiting for an apology, the moment you stopped chasing closure, the moment you stopped expecting fairness, that's when the monster took its first breath. You realized the world doesn't care. People don't care. Fairness is a myth. Justice is a joke. And suddenly you were no longer chained to the illusions that kept you weak. You were free. Free in the darkest way. Free in a way that made you dangerous. Because once you've accepted that nobody's coming to save you, you don't wait anymore. You don't hope anymore. You don't beg anymore. You act. This new version of you doesn't operate on feelings. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't rely on handshakes, smiles, or promises. It operates on discipline. It runs on rage. It's fueled by silence. You don't waste time defending yourself because monsters don't defend. Monsters don't explain. Monsters don't kneel to accusations. You walk through their noise like it doesn't exist, because to you, it doesn't. They wanted you small. Instead, you became something so large they can't fit you into the cage anymore. The monster they built doesn't play by the rules. The rules were written to keep you tame, to keep you begging, to keep you soft. But now, you don't recognize their rules anymore. You don't ask if you're allowed to rise. You rise anyway. You don't ask if you're welcome. You arrive anyway. You don't ask for permission. You take what's yours and you leave the rest in flames. They should have left you alone, but they didn't. And now, every move you make is a reminder that their cruelty was the architect of their own fear. And here's the final truth. Monsters don't go back. You don't shrink back into softness once you've been burned alive. You don't turn back into the innocent version they exploited. That person is gone, buried, ashes. And in his place stands something that doesn't flinch anymore, something that doesn't hesitate, something that doesn't care if it's loved or hated. They can't kill you now, because to kill you, they'd have to erase what they've done. They'd have to undo every betrayal, every scar, every ounce of pain they handed you. And they can't. That's the joke. That's the nightmare. They forged the very thing they can't control, can't defeat, can't destroy. They made the monster, and now they have to live with it. They unleashed you thinking they'd end you. Instead, they ended themselves. You are their consequence. You are their reminder. You are the shadow that follows them forever, whispering, "You can't kill what you built." And now you walk different. Your eyes don't blink the same. Your voice doesn't shake the same. Your silence feels heavier, darker. People sense it. They don't know what changed, but they know something did. And it scares them, not because you're violent, not because you're loud, but because you're untouchable. You don't play their games anymore. You don't react to their tricks. You don't feed their traps. You walk straight through them like smoke. That's what happens when a monster is born. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't roar. It doesn't need to. Its presence alone is enough. So let them stare. Let them whisper. Let them wonder what happened to the old you. Let them miss the version they could lie to, betray, manipulate, and exploit. That person's gone. They killed him. And in doing so, they made you. They wanted a victim, but they built a monster. And monsters? Monsters don't break. Monsters don't beg. Monsters don't die easy. That is your truth now. That is your weapon. And that is their punishment. They thought they were cutting you open. They thought they were breaking you apart. They thought every scar they left on you would be a reminder of your weakness. But they forgot one thing. Scars don't whisper weakness. Scars scream survival. Scars aren't shame. Scars are signatures. They're receipts of every war you were dragged into but refused to lose. They don't fade to erase the memory. They stay carved into your body and your mind as permanent evidence that you're still standing. That is the irony. Every time they tried to destroy you, they left their fingerprints on your evolution. Every scar tells a story, but not the story they hoped for. They wanted the scars to prove you were fragile. Instead, they proved you were indestructible. They wanted the scars to remind you of the pain, Instead, they remind you of the power. They wanted to be remembered as the ones who hurt you, but in truth, they'll only be remembered as the ones who built you. Because those scars, they're not symbols of their victory, they're proof of yours. The betrayal you endured was supposed to silence you, but it carved discipline into your bones. The rejection you suffered was supposed to bury you, but it gave you fuel to outlast everyone who doubted you. The lies they spread were supposed to erase your name, but they stamped your hunger with fire that cannot be erased. They thought scars were shackles. They forgot scars are armor. You wear what they gave you, and that's why they fear you now. Because your skin, your heart, your mind, they no longer look soft, open, or breakable. They look forged, marked, dangerous. And deep down, they know those marks were made by their own hands. Every insult, every betrayal, every humiliation, all of it is carved into you as proof of their failure. You didn't break. You didn't shatter. You transformed. And now, those scars burn like signatures they can't erase. The funny part? People try to hide their scars. They try to cover them, pretend they never happened, erase the evidence. Not you. You drag them into the light. You display them. Because scars are proof you lived through what others would have died from. They are reminders that every cut, every bruise, every moment of pain was not wasted. It was invested. That investment hardened you into someone they can't control anymore. Here's the dark truth. The same people who laughed while cutting you open are now terrified of what they see. Because they don't just see scars, they see their fingerprints. They see the evidence of their cruelty staring back at them and the monster they forged. They don't get to pretend they weren't part of it. They don't get to erase their role. Your scars are the mirror. They can't escape. And every time they see you, they see what they did and what it made you. Pain is a brutal teacher, but it doesn't grade with sympathy. It carves lessons into your body. It forces growth through wounds. It tattoos discipline where comfort once lived. That is why scars matter. They are not symbols of being hurt. They are proof of transformation. Proof that you survived the storm they prayed would bury you. Proof that you carry the evidence of their failure forever. Think about it. The monster they fear wasn't born in peace. It wasn't born in kindness. It wasn't born in safety. It was born in cruelty and betrayal and lies. Every scar you carry is a chapter in the book of your evolution. And now, when they see you, they don't see the fragile victim they thought they left behind. They see the monster they helped build. The monster they cannot kill because it carries their signature. You want education. Here it is. Scars are psychology and flesh. Trauma hardens neural pathways. Pain reshapes behavior. Betrayal engraves new standards. You no longer react like you once did because scars taught you better. Scars are reminders not to return to weakness. Scars are alarms that go off when betrayal smells too familiar. Scars are signposts that say, never again. They don't just protect you physically. They protect you mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They are living shields. So let them call you bitter. Let them call you cold. Let them call you hardened. Because those are just words for what they created. And remember this, once you've scarred, you don't go back to smooth skin. You don't return to innocence. You don't return to fragility. You stay marked forever. And that permanence is your power. Do you think they'd ever admit it? That they regret what they did? Of course not. They'll lie to themselves. They'll pretend the monster standing in front of them isn't their responsibility. But deep down, in the silence of their own heads, they know. They know they left the cuts. They know they fueled the fire. They know their hands carved the creature they now fear. And that knowledge will haunt them more than any revenge you could ever take. You don't need to hunt them. You don't need to scream. You don't need to prove anything. Your scars scream for you. Your scars hunt for you. Your scars prove everything without you saying a word. Every time they see you, they'll remember, we made this. We tried to bury this. And now it's the shadow that never leaves us. That's the punishment they can't escape. You didn't ask to be scarred. You didn't ask to be betrayed. You didn't ask to be turned into this. But you didn't run from it either. You absorbed it. You embraced it. You used it. And now, the monster is permanent. The monster is irreversible. The monster is your legacy. And every scar is the ink of that legacy written on your skin and burned into your soul. So when you stand alone, when you look at your reflection, don't see brokenness. See signatures. Signatures of survival. Signatures of discipline. Signatures of the fact that you can't be killed by the ones who already tried. They failed once. They'll fail forever. Because the scars are proof, the monster they fear isn't going away. The monster is permanent. The monster is you. And the cruelest truth of all, they can't erase what they signed. They never meant to build you. They only meant to break you. That was the plan. Crush your confidence, humiliate you, strip away whatever strength you had, and watch you rot. But plans don't always go the way architects intend. Sometimes the hammer misses the nail. Sometimes the fire doesn't consume, it forges. And sometimes, when you try to bury someone alive, you end up planting a seed. That's exactly what happened. Every insult, every rejection, every moment of betrayal, it wasn't destruction. It was instruction. You learned, you adapted, you hardened. They didn't realize that the cruelty they used as a weapon was secretly sharpening you into something they couldn't recognize anymore. They thought they were punishing you. In reality, they were training you. Every humiliation was another rep. Every betrayal was another mile. Every rejection was another scar to armor your skin. They gave you free lessons in survival, and you took every single one and built a monster they could no longer control. Understand something. Life's most brutal teachers never stand at a blackboard. They don't hand you notes. They don't pat you on the back. They hit you. They betray you. They cut you where it hurts the most. And in that pain, you learn the lessons you never forget. Comfort teaches nothing. Approval teaches nothing. Only pain etches its handwriting so deep in your mind that it never fades. That's why you should thank them in silence. Not because they deserve gratitude, but because they accidentally handed you the curriculum of power. When they laughed at you, you learned how to live without validation. When they abandoned you, you learned how to walk alone. When they lied about you, you learned how to stop defending yourself. When they mocked your efforts, you learned how to build in silence. Do you see the pattern? Every time they tried to strip something from you, they ended up handing you the opposite. They thought they were feeding weakness. They were feeding fire. The monster wasn't born in glory. It wasn't built in applause. It was trained in shadows, in silence, in rejection. You learned to sharpen your mind when nobody believed in you. You learned to discipline yourself when everyone else was laughing. You learned to rise from nothing when they gave you nothing. They set out to make you collapse. But what they did was condition you for war. Think about it. Who taught you not to care about opinions? The ones who gave you none. Who taught you self-reliance? The ones who left you to fend for yourself. Who taught you discipline? The ones who mocked you while you worked in silence. Without realizing it, they created the very traits that make you unstoppable now. They were the trainers who never knew they were training. The cruel coaches who built a fighter they can't enter the ring with. You don't need to forgive them. Forgiveness is irrelevant. What matters is recognizing the truth. They had no idea what they were building. They thought they were breaking a fragile human. What they were really doing was hammering steel. And when steel cools, it doesn't go back to soft metal. It stays strong forever. That's what you are now. Hardened, sharpened, permanent. Here's the irony. The version of you that might have needed them. The version of you that once begged for approval. That version is dead. They killed it. And in killing it, they built something unkillable. That's the backfire. That's the cosmic joke. They set out to destroy, but instead, they graduated you into someone beyond their reach. They gave you a doctorate in indifference. They trained you in silence. They handed you the skill set of monsters while thinking they were just punishing a victim. The monster doesn't beg. The monster doesn't flinch. The monster doesn't explain. And you didn't get that way by accident. You got that way because they forced you into it. They forced you to adapt. They forced you to evolve. They forced you to let go of weakness faster than you were ready. They took away your crutches and you learned to run without legs. That's why you're dangerous now. Not because you always were, but because they built you into this. The lesson? Stop seeing betrayal as tragedy. Stop seeing rejection as failure. Stop seeing humiliation as the end. Every one of those moments is unintentional training. Every one of those moments is a rep, a scar, a page in the dark textbook that turns fragile humans into dangerous monsters. You don't get this kind of strength and comfort. You don't get this kind of discipline and peace. You only get it in fire. And the fire is always lit by other people's cruelty. You owe them nothing, no apology, no gratitude, no explanation. But what you can do is use what they gave you. Use the scars, use the silence, use the rejection. That's the final insult to them, that the monster they built will never serve them. It will only destroy the illusions they tried to bury you in. When you walk now, walk knowing every step is powered by the very pain they tried to drown you with. When you work now, work knowing every rep is fueled by the humiliation they wanted to be your grave. When you rise now, rise knowing they trained you, but you own the result. That's the ultimate reversal. That's the ultimate power flip. So, let them live in denial. Let them pretend they didn't mean to. Let them cover their tracks with excuses. It doesn't matter. The truth remains. You are their creation, and they can't undo it. They built the monster, and now the monster moves without chains. You carry their cruelty in your veins like fuel. And when they look at you now, what they see is a reflection of everything they gave you, turned against them. They trained you without knowing, and that ignorance is the sweetest part, because they thought they were destroying you. They thought they were burying you. They thought they were laughing at your funeral, but it wasn't a funeral. It was the gym. It was the workshop. It was the forge. And what crawled out of that fire isn't someone they recognize anymore. What crawled out is someone they'll never be able to kill. They thought they were burying you. They thought they were silencing you. They thought their cruelty would erase you from existence. But every insult, every betrayal, every rejection was not destruction. It was construction. They were hammering nails into steel, not wood. They were shaping something that would outlive them, something that would walk out of the fire stronger than anything they could ever control. They believed they were breaking you, but all they were doing was building the very monster they now fear. And now the time has come to face reality. You are not the person they left behind. You are not the fragile version of yourself they tried to stomp on. That person died, burned, transformed into something else entirely. They created a monster. And here's the cruel twist. Monsters don't die easily. Monsters don't play by rules. Monsters don't kneel. You can't kill me without killing yourself, because I am your creation. I carry your fingerprints in my scars. I carry your words etched into my silence. I carry every attempt you made to destroy me, and I turned each one into the steel in my spine. There is no going back now. You cannot undo the monster you shaped. You can't beg it away. You can't wish it away. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. You created this with your own hands, with every betrayal, with every knife in the back, with every time you told me I wasn't enough. You crafted my rage. You sharpened my detachment. You taught me the art of being ruthless, because you left me no other choice. You raised a beast, and now the beast no longer obeys you. You thought control was yours. You thought I was trapped under your thumb. But monsters don't stay leashed forever. You gave me enough pain to sever the leash. You gave me enough scars to stop bleeding. You gave me enough silence to hear myself louder than I ever heard you. And once I saw who I really was, you lost me forever. That's when you lost your power. Because you can't control what no longer needs you. You can't destroy what no longer bends to your rules. This is the part you'll never accept. I didn't become strong in spite of you. I became strong because of you. You wanted me to collapse. I didn't. You wanted me to beg. I didn't. You wanted me to break. I couldn't. Every attempt to end me only trained me to survive without you. You don't get to cry about the monster standing in front of you now. You built it. You fed it. You unleashed it. The old me wanted understanding. The old me wanted closure. The old me wanted peace. That version of me died in the war you started. Now there is no begging, no explaining, no defending. The monster doesn't care if you understand. The monster doesn't care if you forgive. The monster doesn't even care if you hate. Hate is fuel. Lies are fuel. Betrayal is fuel. Everything you thought would destroy me was fuel, and now the fire burns too bright for you to stand near. This isn't revenge. Revenge would be too small. This is inevitability. You thought your cruelty would end me, but it became the foundation I stand on. You can't kill that. You can't erase the monster you forced into existence. You don't get to bury me now because I no longer exist in a place where you can touch me. You can't kill what already burned alive. You can't kill what already rebuilt itself in silence. You can't kill what no longer fears death. The truth is simple. You wanted me gone, but now you can't escape me. I live in your mistakes. I live in your regrets. I live in the memory of every word you wish you could take back. You created something permanent. You made me, and now I am the consequence you cannot outrun. The monster doesn't forget. The monster doesn't forgive. The monster doesn't vanish. And that is your punishment, to live in the shadow of what you built. So here we are. You can scream, you can lie, you can spin the story however you like. None of it matters. You had control once, you had power once, but you wasted it trying to break me. And now, the power belongs to me, because here's the truth that will choke you every time you remember it. You can't kill me without killing the very thing you created. And you'll never do that, because deep down, you know I'm stronger than you ever were. This is not about victory. This is about inevitability. You can't erase the monster. You can't rewrite the story. You can't destroy the shadow standing in front of you. You thought you had the final word, but the final word was mine. You thought you ended me, but you only ended your illusion of control. And now, the monster walks free. You can't kill what you built. You can't undo what you created. You can't bury what you unleashed. And now, every time you see me, every time you hear my name, every time you remember the pain you caused, you'll know the truth. The monster lives, and it lives because of you. They thought you were food. They thought you were prey. They thought they could circle you, sink their teeth in, and walk away with your soul in their hands. That was the plan. That was the game. You were supposed to remain beneath them, predictable, fragile, waiting for mercy. But mercy never came, and fragility didn't last. Pain burned you alive, and when the fire cleared, you weren't prey anymore. You weren't food. You weren't something to consume. You were the monster their arrogance had crafted. The predator never expects the prey to grow teeth. That's the arrogance of the strong. They believe domination is permanent, that control can never slip, that the chains will always hold. They underestimate silence. They underestimate patience. They underestimate the man who swallows his suffering long enough to weaponize it. And then one day they wake up to realize the game is flipped. The prey doesn't run anymore. The prey waits. The prey stalks. The prey becomes the nightmare they didn't prepare for. Fear is a language predators aren't used to speaking. They project it. They never absorb it. But the moment you transformed, they felt it for the first time. The silence you mastered became their alarm. The calm you carry unsettled their chaos. They used to thrive off your weakness, but when you stopped reacting, they started drowning in their own noise. They know what they created. They know they pulled too far, cut too deep, mocked too loud. Now they live with the consequence. And the consequence is you. You don't need to chase them. That's the beauty of this transformation. They already know. Every room you walk into, their stomach tightens. Every glance you give them, they remember the damage they caused. Every word you speak carries the shadow of everything you've endured. You don't need to roar. You don't need to raise your fists. You don't need to play their game. Your presence is the punishment. You've become proof that cruelty doesn't vanish. It mutates. It evolves. It creates something stronger, sharper, harder to kill. The predator learns fear when control is gone. Their entire power was built on your reactions. They poked, you bled. They mocked, you explained. They lied, you defended. That cycle fed them, kept them alive, made them believe they were gods. But gods only exist when they're worshipped, and you stopped worshiping. You starved the cycle. You denied the ritual. You let silence devour the game. And in that silence, they saw the truth. The kingdom wasn't made of stone, it was made of glass. And you had already learned how to shatter it. Do you want to know what fear looks like? It's not screaming, it's not shouting, it's not violence. Fear is when they lower their eyes in a room they used to dominate. Fear is when they try to laugh, but it sounds hollow. Fear is when they talk about you behind closed doors because they don't have the courage to face you head on. Fear is when their own mask starts to suffocate them. That's what happens when the predator becomes prey. That's what happens when the monster they created refuses to die. They'll never admit it, but they regret everything. Every insult, every betrayal, every game they played to make you feel small. They thought it was fun. They thought it was power. But now, those memories eat them alive. Because those memories are tied to the monster that won't go away. You live in their head, rent-free, a constant reminder of their failure. They can't erase you. They can't undo you. They can't control you. They tried to bury you, but you grew roots. They tried to silence you, but silence became your weapon. They tried to kill you, but instead they gave you immortality. That's why they're scared now. Not because you attack them, not because you scream at them, but because you don't need to. You've reached the point they'll never reach. Freedom from needing them at all. They built their identity on your suffering, but you built yours on surviving it. And that kind of strength terrifies people who have never known struggle. They can't match it. They can't copy it. They can't break it. They can only watch as it swallows their illusion of power whole. The predator is learning what you already knew. Fear is the greatest teacher. You studied it. You swallowed it. You lived with it until you made it obey you. They avoided it their entire lives. That's why they're weak. That's why they break at the first sign of silence. That's why they panic when you don't dance to their tune anymore. They thought they were teaching you a lesson in pain. Instead, they trained you in discipline, control, and unshakable patience. They sharpened the knife that now hangs above their own heads. Understand this clearly. You don't have to get revenge. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to fight their battles or defend your scars. Existence itself is your revenge. The fact that you're here, breathing, unbroken, stronger, colder. That's the victory. Every day you keep moving forward without them. Their plan crumbles further into dust. Every success, every ounce of strength, every calm silence, that's a knife in their illusion. They don't need you to fight them. They need you to stop existing. And the fact that you refuse to vanish terrifies them more than any retaliation ever could. So let them tremble. Let them whisper. Let them scramble for ways to reclaim a power that is never coming back. Because the truth is undeniable, they made you into this. They built the monster. They fed the fire. They carved the scars. And now the fire burns in your eyes. Now the monster stands in front of them. Now the scars glow like armor. They don't get to walk away from that. They don't get to unmake what they created. They don't get to pretend you don't exist. They live with you forever, whether they like it or not. The predator learns fear the day the prey stops running. And you stop running. You stopped caring about their opinion, their approval, their attempts at control. You stopped playing their game. And once the game is over, so is their power. The predator has nothing left but fear. Fear of you. Fear of themselves. Fear of the consequences they can never erase. That's the reality they can't stomach. You can't kill a monster you created. And the more they try to, the more they realize the monster was never your curse. It was their legacy. They expected you to kneel. That was the script. They thought the monster they carved out of pain would still crave approval. They thought no matter how much you bled, you would still come crawling for an apology, still hunger for closure, still whisper in the dark that you needed to be seen. That was their mistake. They believed scars mean weakness. They never understood that scars are proof you've already survived the worst they could do. Once you've survived, you don't beg anymore. The monster doesn't care about apologies. Apologies don't erase scars. Apologies don't restore stolen years. Apologies don't rebuild trust that was never real. The monster doesn't wait for recognition. Recognition is cheap, a performance, a show put on for applause. You don't need them to admit what they did. You don't need them to validate who you became. You became this through fire, and fire doesn't wait for permission to burn. Begging belongs to the weak version of you, the one who believed that love could fix betrayal, that friends wouldn't lie, that loyalty was sacred. That version of you is gone. It died in the humiliation, in the rejection, in the disrespect. And what stood up from the ashes doesn't ask, doesn't hope, doesn't wait. The monster moves on its own time, with its own rules. Dependency was the old chain around your neck. You used to think people would complete you, that if you just proved your worth, they would finally respect you, that if you just kept giving, eventually they would give back. That lie is dead now. You don't measure yourself by their reaction anymore. They don't define your value. Their silence doesn't reduce your power. Their presence doesn't increase it. They're not the currency you trade in anymore. The monster doesn't beg because begging is bargaining. And when you bargain, you admit you're beneath them. You're not beneath anyone. Not anymore. You learn the hard way that weakness is an invitation for abuse. You learn that people who see you begging see you bleeding, and they enjoy it. So you stopped bleeding for them. You stopped giving them the satisfaction. Here's the truth. Every moment you don't beg is a victory. Every unanswered call is a warning. Every step you take alone is a declaration of war. You're not waiting for anyone to clap for you. You're not explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You're not lowering yourself just to be seen. Let them look away. Let them ignore you. Their vision doesn't decide if you exist. You built yourself to a point where their opinion can't reach. The monster doesn't wait outside doors that never open. The monster kicks down walls and builds its own halls. If they close the door on you, good. You didn't need their room. You didn't need their table. You didn't need their crumbs. You build your own kingdom in silence, and when they finally hear about you again, you're no longer a beggar at their gates. You're the king of your own. This isn't arrogance, this is survival. The weak beg because they're afraid of being alone. The strong stop begging because they discovered the truth. Solitude is power. Begging ties you to people who never wanted you to rise. Silence detaches you, and in that detachment you rise beyond them. They thought you couldn't live without them, but here you are. Not only living, but thriving, stronger than they ever imagined. Begging is an old language you've forgotten. You don't speak it anymore. Your vocabulary is silence, discipline, and action. While they waste energy playing games of attention, you're stacking wins they'll never touch. While they shout to be noticed, you're building a life too heavy for their approval to matter. While they still expect you to crawl back, you're already 10 miles ahead, never turning around. Understand this. The monster doesn't beg because begging gives power to the abuser. The abuser wants you dependent. They want you desperate. They want you crawling so they can step on you again. The moment you stop begging, the dynamic flips. They lose their grip. They panic. They realize they can't pull you back. And that fear eats them alive. That's the quiet revenge. Not screaming, not proving, not explaining. Just walking away without a word and never looking back. You want to hurt a narcissist? Ignore them. You want to kill a manipulator? Stop responding. You want to destroy an abuser? Live without them like they never existed. Nothing cuts deeper than irrelevance, and the monster wields irrelevance like a blade. They thought they'd see you crawling forever. They thought they'd keep you waiting at the gates of their validation. Instead, you disappeared. And the silence scared them more than your screams ever could, because screams are predictable. Begging is familiar. Silence? Silence is lethal. It means you don't need them. It means you don't care. It means they lost control. The monster doesn't beg because the monster has nothing left to lose. You already lost everything once, and you lived. You already faced humiliation, and you stood back up. You already tasted abandonment, and you built alone. What can they take from you now? Nothing. And when someone has nothing to lose, that's when they become untouchable. This is where power begins. Not in revenge, not in explanations, not in desperate cries for justice. Power begins the moment you stop needing anything from those who tried to destroy you. The begging dies, the dependence dies, and in its place grows something colder, sharper, stronger. Something that doesn't bend for anyone. Something that doesn't wait for anyone. So let them wonder why you don't come back. Let them call you arrogant. Let them call you cold. Let them call you heartless. They don't realize those are just names people throw at the free. The monster doesn't beg because the monster doesn't need. And the one who doesn't need cannot be chained. Begging is death. Silence is rebirth. You chose silence. You chose strength. You chose to stop bleeding for people who enjoyed your pain. And now? Now you're the reminder they never wanted. A living warning. A permanent scar. Proof that their cruelty didn't break you, it built you. Proof that the monster doesn't kneel, the monster doesn't beg. And that's why it wins. There is no going back. The moment they broke you, the moment they crossed a line, the moment they thought they could use you, betray you, or humiliate you, something irreversible happened. They didn't just hurt you, they didn't just scar you. They built something inside you that can never be dismantled. They set fire to the bridge and then wondered why you never returned. They cut the rope and then cried when you learned to climb without it. They forged a monster out of your pain, and now they're horrified that it doesn't obey. Every betrayal left fingerprints. Every rejection carved new edges. Every insult sharpened the blade. They thought those moments would fade, but pain does not fade. Pain hardens. Pain crystallizes. Pain doesn't leave, it evolves. And once pain evolves, it becomes irreversible. You are no longer the person they thought they could break. That version is dead. What stands here now is the aftermath, and aftermaths cannot be undone. They wanted control. They wanted dominance. They wanted you to fold into silence while they enjoyed the chaos. But chaos is a teacher, and pain is a sculptor. The longer you were left to rot, the more you transformed. They never understood that monsters are not born in power. Monsters are born in betrayal. Monsters are born when someone is cornered with nothing left but rage and discipline. And once the monster appears, you cannot kill it because you cannot erase the history that summoned it. Think about it. If someone cuts you, you bleed and then you scar. The scar is permanent. You can't peel it off. You can't erase it. You can't return to the skin you once had. That's how your soul works now. The scars they left behind became your proof of survival. They are permanent signatures of their cruelty, and each one reminds you that you will never allow them that power again. They can beg for forgiveness. They can pretend it never happened. They can rewrite stories, but the scars don't lie, and scars don't vanish. This is where most people get it wrong. They think time heals. Time doesn't heal. Time reveals. Time shows you what you've become when the dust settles. Time teaches you that forgiveness isn't erasure. Time reminds you that the old version of yourself is never coming back. They built something permanent. They built someone they cannot control. They built someone they cannot manipulate anymore. And that permanence terrifies them. Irreversible creation is the price of their arrogance. They wanted to wound you, but in wounding you, they reforged you. They gave you obsession. They gave you focus. They gave you discipline. Every sleepless night you spent replaying the betrayal was training. Every silent day you carried anger turned into fuel. Every lonely walk, every dark thought, every time you wanted to break, those were the bricks of your new self. You didn't just survive. You became untouchable. Now they realize their mistake. They didn't just hurt you. They manufactured a version of you that is no longer accessible. They try the same tricks, but the tricks fall flat. They attempt the same manipulation, but the strings no longer attach. They send guilt, shame, noise, but the monster doesn't respond. They are powerless because the old version of you, the one that cared, the one that bent, the one that explained, is gone. Irreversibly gone. And that's what eats them alive. They wish they could undo it. They wish they could go back and stop themselves before they went too far. But there is no undo button. There is no reset. Once the monster is born, the game changes forever. You cannot tame it. You cannot erase it. You cannot kill it. It exists now, and it exists because of them. That is the ultimate consequence. They thought they were playing with weakness, but they were forging a weapon. They thought they were breaking you, but they were hammering steel. They thought they were ending you, but they were writing their own failure. And now the monster lives permanently. Not in rage, not in chaos, but in cold, disciplined silence. You don't lash out, you don't beg, you don't fight for their approval. You move like something inevitable, something final, something that cannot be undone. Understand this. When you reach this stage, you become history written in stone. You are not a phase. You are not a temporary reaction. You are an irreversible creation. And that creation walks into every room with quiet danger. You no longer need their recognition. You no longer need their apology. You no longer need their validation, because the creation was built out of their disrespect. The very thing they thought would end you has defined you. And that is the cruelest truth of all. They cannot escape it. They cannot deny it. They cannot kill it. Because killing you would mean killing what they themselves built. Destroying you would mean admitting their own fingerprints are on the monster's body. You are their consequence. You are their reflection. You are their creation. And creations don't vanish. So here's the warning. They don't want to hear but will never forget. You are irreversible. They cannot run from what they've built. They cannot silence what they've awakened. They cannot destroy what was formed by their own hands. They wanted a victim. They created a monster. They wanted you to beg. They created someone who never will again. They wanted weakness. They created permanence. This is where the story ends for them, but where it begins for you. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are not unfinished. You are the permanent reminder that cruelty backfires. You are the irreversible proof that pain never dissolves, it transforms. And transformation is the one thing they can never undo. Let them live with it. Let them choke on it. Let them try to deny it while the truth follows them like a shadow. Because you are not returning to what you were. You are not erasing what has been forged. You are the irreversible creation. You are the scar they will never forget. And every time they see you, every time they hear your name, every time they remember what they did, they will realize the final law of dark motivation. You can't kill a monster you created. You thought this would end with me on the ground. You thought the pain you delivered would erase me. You thought betrayal, rejection, and humiliation would silence me. But here we are. I'm still here, stronger than ever, and you're left choking on the consequences of your own design. You wanted to destroy me, but you created me. You wanted to bury me, but you carved the monster into existence. And now the monster does not disappear. The monster stands in front of you as your permanent reminder, your shadow, your legacy of failure. You must understand the law you ignored. Once you create something through pain, it doesn't vanish when you stop swinging. You can't undo scars. You can't erase memory. You can't reverse transformation. Every cut you gave me became a mark of permanence. Every rejection a lesson. Every betrayal a blueprint. And now all of that lives inside me, stitched into the monster you can't escape. I don't need to chase revenge anymore. I don't need to shout or scream or prove anything. My existence is the punishment. You didn't break me. You reshaped me. The person who would have begged, explained, and pleaded for your approval is gone. You killed him with your cruelty. What stands now is something you never wanted to meet. Someone without fear, someone without weakness, someone who looks you in the eyes and doesn't blink. That's what terrifies you. You thought you could control the process, but transformation has no leash. Once a man learns how to live with pain, he becomes untouchable. And here's the part you never considered. Monsters don't want your apology. They don't want your pity. They don't want your forgiveness. They want nothing from you. That is what makes them unstoppable. I don't wait for closure. I don't wait for explanations. I don't wait for redemption. I already closed the book and I set fire to the library. The monster doesn't need your validation. It feeds on silence. It feeds on discipline. It feeds on its own fire. You can't kill what you created because killing me means admitting what you did. And you'll never do that. You'll never stand up and say, yes, I built this. Instead, you'll live in denial while watching me tower over the ruins of your plan. Every success I claim, Every step I take without you, every victory that shines in silence, all of it traces back to you. Your fingerprints are all over this legacy, and that should haunt you more than any revenge ever could. Do you see the irony? The very thing you tried to prevent became inevitable. You tried to weaken me, and in the process, you strengthened me. You tried to erase me, and in the process, you immortalized me. You tried to humiliate me, and in the process, you exposed your own weakness. That's why you can't kill me. You'd have to kill yourself first, because I am your reflection, magnified and weaponized. The monster doesn't chase anyone. The monster doesn't explain itself. The monster doesn't beg for understanding. It simply exists, and existence is enough. People can see it in my silence, in the way I no longer flinch, in the way I no longer ask. That aura of inevitability burns deeper than words. And you feel it every time you hear my name, every time you see my shadow stretch across your illusions. You built me, and now you must live with me. Let me educate you. Creation is irreversible. Pain rewires the brain. Betrayal hardens the heart. Rejection sharpens the will. These aren't wounds that fade with time. They're transformations. That's why people who think they can break someone always fail. They don't understand that breaking doesn't erase. Breaking rebuilds. And rebuilding under fire doesn't create weakness. It creates steel. Steel doesn't apologize. Steel doesn't bend. Steel remembers the heat that forged it. You cannot undo steel. You cannot unmake scars. You cannot unteach lessons once they're carved in blood. That's the rule you forgot. You thought this was temporary. You thought this was just pain. You thought one day I'd snap back into the obedient version you wanted, but that version is gone. You can't resurrect the dead, and the person you knew is dead forever. What you see now is permanent. What you fear now is eternal. This is your legacy. The monster you feared became the legacy you created. Every room I walk into, I carry your failure with me. Every silent victory I build, I carry your fingerprints on my armor. You may try to hide, you may try to deny, but deep down you know, this is your work. And that burns deeper than any revenge I could plan. Revenge ends when the blood dries. Legacy never ends. You'll live the rest of your life watching your failure breathe in front of you. And don't think this monster hates you. Hate is a luxury. Hate requires caring. The monster doesn't care anymore. The monster doesn't waste energy on what's already beneath it. That's the cruelest part. You built me with your cruelty, but I've surpassed you. You don't haunt me, I haunt you. You don't define me, I define you. You don't chase me, I don't even look back at you. And that silence is worse than any scream, so now you live with it. Every day you wake up knowing that you cannot erase what you unleashed. You cannot kill what you created. You cannot undo the transformation. You can only sit in the shadows of your own failure, hoping the monster never decides to look your way again. And even if I never do, you'll still feel me. In your doubts, in your regrets, in your nightmares. This is the warning you ignored. When you try to kill someone with pain, you gamble with the result. Sometimes they break, sometimes they disappear, but sometimes they transform. Sometimes they become something beyond your control. And when that happens, there is no going back, no apology, no undoing, no cure. The monster cannot be killed because the monster is a reflection of everything you did, and reflections do not die. You can't kill a monster you created. You can only live with it. You can only regret it. You can only watch as it grows stronger while you shrink smaller. This isn't revenge. This isn't punishment. This is inevitability. This is consequence. This is the law you wrote when you decided to play with cruelty. So live with it. Live with the monster. Live with the shadow. Live with the permanence of what you built. Because I am not leaving. I am not apologizing. I am not erasing myself for your comfort. I am the living proof of your failure. I am the consequence you can't bury. I am the end of your illusion. And now, for the rest of your life, you'll remember the truth. You can't kill a monster you created. Stop hesitating. Stop waiting for someone else to hand you the life you should already be building. Every second you waste is proof they still own a piece of you. Take it back. Subscribe now, lock in, and step into the mindset that kills excuses and forges monsters out of pain. This isn't comfort. This isn't therapy. This is war, and only those who refuse to break will survive it. Hit that button, join the movement, and prove to yourself you're done being average. Legends aren't born, they're built. Stop building here